Good morning, good morning, good morning. Boop. There they are. Good morning, guys. Hey, it's Tuesday. We made it to Tuesday. Did you guys check out last night's episode with Nadine Ness? As expected, it went very deep, very, very deep. So check it out. Really do check it out. It's time to work on adult trauma and try and do what Theo Fleury said and assist people that have adult trauma, whatever it was, and work on it. Nadine, thank you. It was really, really an excellent episode. I do appreciate that. And again, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's good. It's all about the sexualization of children, how to work on spotting pedophiles, working against the narrative to normalize pedophilia, and making it comfortable for people to get the support they need, whether you're parents or children or otherwise. And also exposing the fact that it's not just men who do it, it's women. And it's not just women who are affected, there's men too. So it was quite the episode. So if you did not check it out, do check it out. Whew, it's quite a tough one. Tonight, though, we have James Bauer. So one of the convoy organizers from Canada Unity. He was in charge of bringing together Bear Hug 1, 2, and 3. So we'll get into those conversations. He's got a lot to talk, a lot. So James Bauer might be 2 episodes because in his own mind, he says there's at least 5 hours to the story. So we might be splitting that up into 2. So make sure you check that out tonight. But this morning, Donald's back. You know, he's back all week. He was gone last week to cover Detective Helen Gruce. And by the way, that story has picked up steam. So thank you very much, Donald, for that. I am finding it everywhere. A whole bunch of people are sending me links to stuff that are picking it up. So great job, Donald. People now know who Detective Helen Gruce is and what they're trying to do to her and her family. So great work there. Great work. And not much else going on Twitter. Things are kind of getting calmed down a little bit. I did announce that Sean Buckley has agreed to come on. So I believe it's September 8th. So Sean Buckley will be coming on. He's the lawyer from the NCI. He's one heck of a person as a lawyer. He's kicking butt. I really, really appreciate the fact that we were able to book him. And I do believe there was one more person that I was able to announce. Let me quickly check that for you. I know Donald's waiting. Oh, yeah, 9/11 whistleblower Kevin Ryan will be joining us on September 14th. So the week of September 11th, I'm looking for September 11th related truth tellers. So we have a whistleblower named Kevin Ryan. If you look into him in the States, he is quite informed on what's going on down there. So he asked me, hey, any subjects particular you would want to hear about? And I said, let's look for Canadian connections. I know one of the banks in the tower was full of Canadian gold. So yeah, let's look for some Canadian connections to talk about that. And building number 7. That's the one that's always bothered me the most, building 7. So check that out, September 14th. On the 15th of September, I got Ray McGinnis coming. He's released a book about 9/11, unanswered questions that the family had that the inquiry did not cover, or the 9/11 Commission did not cover. So take a look at that. Put that in your calendar. I haven't booked 11th or 12th yet. I'm still got a few certain people I'm looking at for those, but we do have them set. But Sean Buckley is on the 8th, and that's all I can announce for you right now. But it's a really busy month coming together, so I hope you enjoy it. Well, today we have David Parker on. So if you were watching our licensed paralegals episode, that was with Jane Sharp, Sharp, and Rebecca. I want to say Stewart, but I think that's wrong. Rebecca Shepard. That sounds right to me. When they were on, lots of stuff was talked about. But David Parker's name came up. I don't know who David is. We're going to find out about him. I know that he worked with or is running or is part of Take Back Alberta, an organization about trying to do exactly that, take back Alberta. So he's definitely politically minded, Alberta minded. And I'm really actually quite keen to get to know who he is and what he's all about. Because his name has popped up a couple times. If you have questions for David, put them in the chat, and we're going to do our best to get to them. I know that there's a few questions out there, so please go ahead and put them in. I do want to make sure that we can get to them. And before I get to them, let me go check my private chat here. Okay, so Donald, you can probably let us know about that. And I know there's no Clay this morning, but good morning for everybody for coffee. Oh, and I see Prairie. I see my flower. Hi, Prairie. Jane Scarf. Okay, just like a scarf for keeping your neck warm. Jane Scarf. It's a neck wrap. There you go. Thanks, Mac. You'll help me remember. Jane Scarf. I'll never forget it now. So I'm going to say good morning to Donald. Good morning, Donald. And I'm going to say good morning. You're muted, bud. And I'm going to say good morning to our new friend, David Parker. Hi, David.
Hey, I don't think I'm muted, but we're good.
Nope. Good. Donald was muted.
I am not muted now. Good morning.
Correct. You are good now. Good morning, gentlemen. Sorry for dragging you out so early there, Donald. Or not Donald, David. Donald is good because he's in the East Coast.
Yeah, he's in the 8 o'clock is fine. No, it's all good. I should be used to it from my days working on golf courses and shoveling horse manure, but it's been a while. So
been a while. I do appreciate it though. Let me go ahead and set this up this way. So look, David, I don't know who you are, but your name's come up a couple times associated with Marco van Huizenbos. I can't get his last name. Can you say it?
Martin van Huizenbos. He was the chief financial officer for Take Back Alberta for about 6 months, but he's moved on in a different direction, and we have a new CFO, new board. But he's done some good work for Take Back Alberta, organizing in the South and helping us with the finances, just bookkeeping, that kind of thing. Obviously, the media loves talking about Marco van Huizenbos because of the Coutts border and the charges that were laid on him and Alex and the Coutts 4 that are still not being allowed out on bail. So, yes, that would be the connection between Take Back Alberta and Marco van Huizenbos.
Cool. Now, were you part of the Coutts situation like Marco was?
No, I was not at all. I started Take Back Alberta before the convoy happened, with the express intention of organizing to vote Jason Kenney out as the leader of the United Conservative Party. And actually, the convoy was a huge help in that endeavor because it rallied a lot of people and got a lot of people paying attention to what was going on in our politics. But no, I was not involved in Coutts. I did show up in Milk River and give a speech there at the rallies that they had there, but I never actually went to Coutts itself. Although I have a lot of friends and compatriots who were there and who've told me many stories about what happened there and in Ottawa.
Okay, so you were active way before the convoy started. You didn't like Jason Kenney. You want to kind of get into the reasons why you created, like, first, I'm assuming you were the founder of Take Back Alberta. And if so, why did you find it?
Yes, I'm a co-founder of Take Back Alberta. There was a couple of us that got together, about 6 of us, in December of 2021, as we were watching Kenney bring down the what he called the restriction exemption program, what was really just a vaccine passport. My story goes back to when I was 14 and I started to get involved in politics in central Alberta. I was homeschooled, and my mother said that since I was so interested in politics, I should probably stop running around telling people that I wanted to be prime minister one day and start actually getting involved in politics. Mm-hmm. So I showed up at my first ever EDA meeting. You would know what that is, an electoral district association for your local riding. And I actually ended up getting elected to the board and being made vice president because, as I think all of us on this call know, young people almost never get involved in politics, and even less so back when I did. So that began my journey. I volunteered about 2,000 hours between the ages of 14 and 18 before I went off to university, and then did a ton of volunteering for the Conservative Party of Canada for all of those years, basically up until 2020. I was actually the national director of field operations for Aaron O'Toole, and then was promptly kicked out basically of his orbit after he won. And that really got me to reflect on all of the years I'd given to politics. I also was in Stephen Harper's office at 23 and spent a year serving as the national, I was the Prairie desk, which really just means I was the regional advisor for the Prairies. I was his liaison between him and the members of the Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba caucus for the Conservative Party of Canada. So they would come to me and I would write memos and have meetings with him to discuss the issues that they were facing. I was also in Kindersley, Saskatchewan, when we announced marketing freedom, which was one of the proudest achievements, I think, of the Harper government, and something I was very proud to be a part of. I could keep going for a long time. Usually this is an hour and 40-minute speech about my background, but this isn't really about me. It's about Take Back Alberta, because I consider that to be the thing that I'm involved in that's had the most impact. And that was founded again in December of 2021. And we've had 4 phases so far at Take Back Alberta. The first phase was to remove Jason Kenney from office. The second phase was to elect a freedom-loving leader, which I believe we've done, though some disagree with me. The third phase was to elect as many people as we could to the UCP board to ensure that that freedom-loving leader wasn't alone in a Jason Kenney caucus, Jason Kenney cabinet, Jason Kenney party. So we ended up winning every single seat on that board at the River Cree Casino last fall. 9 were open, and we won all 9 seats. And now we are headed into the next annual general meeting down here in Calgary at the Grey Eagle, where we will finish the job. We also had our phase 4, which was stop the NDP. And I think we were wildly successful at that. If you look at the areas that Take Back Alberta worked in, the 4 ridings around Edmonton, Leduc Beaumont, Spruce Stony Plain, Morinville St. Albert, and Strathcona Sherwood Park, we won all of those by a higher margin than was expected. We also worked in Lethbridge East and in 10 ridings in Calgary. Of the 10 ridings in Calgary that we focused on, we won 7 of them. And if it wasn't for the work of Take Back Alberta, I believe the 1,300 votes that separated us from having an NDP government and not would have gone to the NDP. So I think we've had a pretty successful track record of organizing people. Our group has 30,000 supporters in it. We have more than 100, almost more than 100 supporters in every single riding in the province right now. And we're just growing and continuing to educate people on how their political system works and how they can get involved and have the most impact. So far, it's been very successful. And I'm very pleased mostly with the work that my captains and the volunteers have done, because they're really the beating heart of this organization.
Well, it sounds like a political party, but you're not a party, right? Like you're more of an advocacy group or a support group. Can I understand this more?
It's hard for people to understand the difference between a party and Take Back Alberta, because most people don't have a very deep understanding of their politics. But a political party runs people for office and has a legal status within both the province and the country. In order to be able to run people, they have certain obligations they have to meet, like having an electoral district association in every riding, or in the case of a province, constituency associations. So we don't run people for office. We don't have a banner. We're not a political party. We're an educational society. What I teach people primarily is that we as conservatives have been making the same mistake over and over again across Canada for a very long time. And that's that when we get upset with the party that is ostensibly supposed to be representing conservative values, we go and start our own party. And the problem with that is every time we've started a new party, we've never won. In fact, if you look at the People's Party of Canada, we've never won a single seat. If you look at the Wild Rose Party, they never won government. You look at the Reform Party, they never won government. You look at the Alliance Party, they never won government, because that's not how our system works. And actually, I know, because I spent a lot of time in the inner circles of conservative politics, that they actually are quite happy when we go off and start our own parties, because then they're like, the crazies have gone over there and they're doing their thing, and we can, and we can run the show. And that's what they end up doing. If you look at what happened to the United Conservative Party, there were 150,000 members of the party when Jason Kenney became leader. At least 120,000 of those were real people with real addresses and all that. And if you look at what happened in the spring of 2021, when there was ramping up towards getting rid of Jason Kenney, and then the spring of 2022, there's only 15,000 members of the United Conservative Party in the spring of 2022. Now, the question you have to ask yourself about that is, all right, well, is it easier to control 15,000 people or 120,000 people? I think the answer is pretty obvious.
Mm-hmm. Well, typically you would say 15,000, but is that the case?
Absolutely. 15,000 people are much easier to control than 120,000 people.
Okay. So, Donald, I'm going to kind of bring you in here to ask a couple questions. You're from Ontario, but you've been paying attention to the Coutts situation, the politics here, Danielle Smith, what's going on, her leadership, what she's doing, that kind of stuff. So before I get into a bunch of questions that I have, I was wondering if there's anything you wanted to add or ask.
An observation. I worked for the Reform Party. Well, I'll start a little bit before then. When I was 4 years old, Prime Minister John Diefenbaker tucked me into bed and read me a bedtime story. My dad was a mechanic. He was trying to ask him to be a candidate. So I've been with the Conservative Party for a long time, and I stayed there for a long time. And when the Reform Party split off, I went there, and our candidate in Barrie won a seat, and it was a total surprise. But people had just had enough of the Conservatives, frankly, making all the promises leading up to elections, fundamental things that really meant a lot to everybody, and then betraying us. And it's happened time and time and time again. Even Danielle Smith, in the lead up to the election, said that she thought it would be a good thing if Albertans controlled their own law enforcement, established their own police force, the Alberta Provincial Police, as a way of regaining a bit of sovereignty and a lot of sovereignty. And she just betrayed the people of Alberta. Well, that's my comment. I'd love to hear your statement about that, because time and time again, we're promised, and we hear, you have to come with the parties, and then they betrayed us every single time.
Well, I think
and hold it. I'm sorry. I'll go back. Harper signed documents and agendas that gave away much of our sovereignty, and that has continued since then. So, sorry, my friend. I just can't get excited about an existing party going to lie to me again about a fundamental things that we care about, and then just doing what they like, as Danielle Smith just did with bowing down and kissing the feet of the RCMP again.
Good question.
I mean, obviously, I totally disagree with your framing of what you've said, and everything that Take Back Alberta is about is the opposite of what you're describing, and I'll walk you through the details of that. The first is you're placing blame on others instead of yourself. At Take Back Alberta, we don't sit there talking about what politicians have done. We talk about what we can do to change things. A lot of people like to complain about politics. It's a national pastime in Canada, but doing something about it is a very different thing. And the argument from Take Back Alberta is not that we love these political parties and we want to support them. The argument is that we need to go into them and begin electing our people onto constituency association boards, EDA boards, the board of the party. A party is not an entity that exists apart from you. It is a group of people that is made up of the people who show up. And if you're not the one showing up and getting involved in that party, and you're sitting there complaining about the party doesn't exist. Now, maybe it's harder than most people would like to get involved in a party and have significant influence on it. Maybe it takes more time than most people are willing to sacrifice. But I say that that is more a statement on those people than it is on the party itself. Now, to your point on Danielle Smith, I'm not in the leadership of the United Conservative Party. I don't make the decisions that the United Conservative Party makes. I'm not sitting in that seat, and I haven't done the work it takes to get to that seat. So the decisions that she's making are based on a lot of factors, including a large majority of her caucus. Now, I happen to know that you're wrong and that actually she is slowly working to dismantle the RCMP in Alberta. And that's being done, you can see in Grand Prairie, where they are getting rid of them in that municipality. I suspect you'll see the same progressively across the province until they really have no jurisdiction here anymore. And then the sheriffs are already here. We already have an Alberta police force. It doesn't have the powers that it needs to have yet, but the sheriffs exist and they will continue to grow. And there are more than one ways. There's more than one way to skin a cat. And looking at things in an obvious way and trumpeting betrayal by the one politician who stood up for the unvaccinated, who has actually done things to try to remedy the problems that we face, fired Dina Hinshaw twice, not once, but twice. I think your characterization is false. Now, to your characterization of Harper, I would say that nobody knew what was happening to the degree that, say, we do on this call now, with the World Economic Forum, with the agenda that was coming towards us. People thought that things like the Paris Accords were a joke. They were non-binding treaties, which meant you didn't have to follow them. Now, I'm not going to defend Stephen Harper. When I was in his office, I was 23 years old. I'm sure there's decisions he made that I don't agree with now. But I would say that I've never met a man whose integrity I trust in more. I've never met a man who would take no taxpayer dollars. He wouldn't take taxpayer dollars. He wouldn't even take them for a budget for clothing. The man has the highest standard of integrity in public office that I've ever witnessed. He was also one of the hardest working people you'll ever meet. I don't know anyone who has put the level of effort he did into Canada. So while it's all well and good to criticize people, and I'm sure that many of your listeners like to do that because that is, as I said, the Canadian national pastime, I also know that none of your listeners could withstand the pressure that these politicians face and the just absolutely rigorous amount of work that they have to do simply to survive. So you'll have to forgive me if I don't have much time for those sentiments.
Hey, look, I actually really enjoyed that answer. And Don, I'll bring it right back in a second.
Me too.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that answer, David. And here's why. We didn't know that other part. Okay, so we see the headline that says she is now backing away. And of course, we know it's mainstream media or main state media. So we really should take it with a grain of salt. And this is kind of why I'm really happy with your answers, because we can now talk about this other information like changing jurisdictionally on smaller levels, changing out the police to a municipal police. I didn't know that, and I'm really impressed with that information, because that certainly changes my opinion.
If you look at the actual laws that have been passed, there is a big incentive being offered to municipalities to have their own police force and to get off the RCMP. Now, there's different ways to do this, but the important thing to note is the majority of Albertans don't want an Alberta police force. But the funny thing is the majority of Albertans are not policed by the RCMP. They're policed by the Edmonton Police and the Calgary Police, right? So those people in Edmonton and Calgary are the ones that are supporting the RCMP, while the RCMP does not have a huge amount of support in rural Alberta. So you have to be politically smart. You can go around talking about betrayals and how politicians don't do what they say. But the truth of the matter is, politics is way more complicated than simple. And I'm not calling people on this call simple-minded, but I'm saying people look at something and they're like, I've been betrayed. It's because you don't understand how things work, right? Mm-hmm. And you just feel some emotional attachment to an idea. Like, the problem with politics is that our leaders are cowards, generally speaking. But then when our leaders are not cowards, they get painted in a light that will almost always destroy them, because, as you just said, the mainstream media goes and says something about her, and we have Dawn here saying that she's betrayed the base from Ontario, right? Mm-hmm. Like, mm-hmm. It's the problem we have as conservatives. We're hypercritical of our leaders, and we do not spend our time attacking the people that we should be attacking. But more than that, we do not reward our leaders for doing the right thing, but we deeply punish them for doing the wrong thing. I mean, people have accused me of doing that to Jason Kenney, right? He was in an impossible situation. Now, I stand by my decision on that, but the truth of the matter is we have a real problem. I was a wild roser. I was happy in 2015 when the NDP won because I hated the PCs so much. That I was like that. And guess what it got us? an NDP government.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, maybe it'd be better if we had an NDP government because, then at least they'd be punished for their corruption. No, NDP governments just further socialist agendas. And there's no moral victory from losing. There isn't. Losing is losing. You're a loser if you lose.
You want to follow up, Donald? Because I thought it was a good answer.
Sure, absolutely. And I might have a little bit of background in politics. I was very active for the PCs on both the federal and the provincial levels. And then I got into the reform, and then I was deputy leader of the Family Coalition Party in Ontario, and we ran candidates in just about every riding, with the exception of I think about 7 or 8. So, I've been around politics and I've seen what happens. But I want to tell you, if what you're saying is accurate, and I'm not doubting you at all, about the communities going with their own police organization in Alberta and dumping the RCMP, I think that's fantastic. And if that is, in fact, the plan, okay. But I just don't see why we signed, or why Alberta signed, a 20-year contract. And, I'd like to believe that the Premier is going ahead full speed to take back the policing and the sovereignty, because when the federal government enforces, is your Premier law enforcement in the province, you're not in charge. It's Ottawa that's in charge. And we saw that at Coutts. We saw it in a lot of other things. So I'm very happy about that. And I hope that continues, and I hope it's real. I wish there were a schedule we could see, or to know which communities are seriously looking at it. Is it 1? Is it 5? Is it 10? I don't know. But I think that would go a long way to reassuring the population of Alberta that they aren't betrayed. Because right now, many in the rural communities absolutely feel they're betrayed, because these RCMP officers, they move in, they move out, they spend 4 or 5 years, and away they go. Their loyalty is not to their neighbors. It's not community-based policing as it was supposed to be with Peel's principles of policing. The community is the police, and the police are the community. No, they're an occupying army. That's what they've become. So let's hope that goes a long way, because you have to have the fundamentals covered. And if law enforcement is covered by Ottawa, you don't run your own province.
Yeah. So we've heard through some testimony, Donald, that even the RCMP themselves use the term paramilitary. And we looked up paramilitary, and it's not a good term. So we definitely don't want that. Hey, so David, can you expand a little bit more on this law that's incentivizing municipalities to take over their own policing? And do you know of which ones are starting to take it over? I'm looking at Drayton Valley. That would be great if they're switching. But do you know which municipalities might be considering it right now? And what are the incentives?
No, like I said, I'm not in the government. I do know that Grand Prairie used the incentive, and that Red Deer is looking at it.
Cool.
I believe Lethbridge already has their own police, but Medicine Hat's also looking at it. And once Red Deer, Medicine Hat, and Grand Prairie are gone,
the rest will
population centers, like there's basically, and I mean, if it is an occupying army, it's a very tiny occupying army. There's hardly any RCMP officers in this province. I believe there's less than 3,000. I'd have to look it up. But I mean, if it's an occupying army, it's pretty embarrassing.
Well, I don't think we're saying that. We're just saying their activity is more paramilitary-like, so they'll come in and be a little bit rougher.
Well, I mean,
with
Don
you
said
than
it was an
normal.
occupying army, and I'm just saying
yeah.
if 3,000 people could occupy Alberta, we should all be pretty embarrassed with ourselves.
Well, the police wanted us to understand 13 people can take over Canada.
Well,
and be arrested in Coutts, right? So.
Well, four can take over Canada.
Well, they're down to 4 now.
Police. But I'm not defending the federal police. I'm just saying I think maybe we should, look ourselves in the mirror if we think that 3,000 people are what's going to stop us from being free. In terms of more information, I'm absolutely positive that that Mike Ellis, the Minister of Public Safety, would be more than happy to talk about that. They're increasing the sheriff's on the streets of Calgary and Edmonton because of a lot of the criminality that's happening with the drug addiction and the descent into lawlessness that our legal system has created. But you guys have to remember, I think this is perhaps the big problem with people who've not held high office and decision-making roles before, is that decisions are not made unilaterally in politics. There's this misconception that leaders just run around telling people what to do, when the truth is that almost all decisions in politics are made in a caucus. The caucus of whatever party is in power has far more power than our media likes to let on. And I mean, for example, Aaron O'Toole is not the leader of the Conservative Party anymore because caucus threw him out, right? The Conservative caucus said we don't want him anymore. And that exact same tool could be used on Danielle Smith if she just decided to do whatever she wanted. And we have to remember that a lot of the people in that caucus are still Kenny people. They're still this more left-wing establishment version, this impatience that so many Canadians have, saying, I want change and I want it right now and everything has to go the way I want, otherwise I've been betrayed. It's just not a practical solution. And I think all the evidence of that is every time these new parties pop up and they think that they could have a chance, the same result always occurs. They never win. They don't have the organization. They don't realize the complexity of the task that they are encountering, because their knowledge base is, well, they've never governed, so they don't know what it takes to govern.
Okay, very good, David. Okay, so you support Danielle from the outside. You're not in the party. You're not actively part of it.
I'm a member of the party, absolutely.
Sure, but you're more like me too. Like, I'm a member as well, but do you get like really active? Are you going to be there in November at the AGM?
Oh, absolutely. I'll be bringing at least 2,000 people to the AGM.
Cool. And what's your goal at the AGM? Phase 4?
Phase 5 is a 3-part phase, but the first part of it is showing up at the annual general meeting, and there's going to be some policies on the docket at these meetings. Mm-hmm. One of them is getting rid of electronic voting. So I talked about this on Jesperson yesterday. That is the number one policy of Take Back Alberta, is we must get rid of tabulators. So right now in Alberta, they have what's called vote anywhere voting. So what that means is if you are in Calgary, but you vote in Edmonton, you can vote in Calgary at an advance poll, and they'll just send it to the riding where you voted. I think that is kind of an affront to democracy. If people can't bother to vote in their riding, they probably shouldn't vote. And the problem with that is then you have votes scattered all over the province, and you're really trusting Elections Alberta officials to get everything right. Do I think that there was cheating in the last election? I don't know. There's some very fishy things that happened with those vote anywhere ballots. But I will say this. Even if there wasn't cheating, it doesn't matter, because there's a lot of people in this province and country who do not trust their voting system, especially don't trust electronic voting. And we need a people that believe in their democracy. If our people lose faith in democracy, that's how you get tyranny, period. So for the sake of protecting our democracy, we should have in-person voting with paper ballot. That's it. That's what we should do.
Don't stop there. What about digital currency?
Pardon me?
What about digital currency?
So digital currency, well, it's an absolute no-go from a Take Back Alberta perspective. And I know that, and we're working hard with people like Bow Valley Credit Union and other groups to try to solidify or to strengthen the Alberta financial system. But it can't be, because we can't have government turning our money on and off. It's a no-go. The problem is when you say digital currency, I know what you mean, because we share a language, because we're part of the same minority at this point. There's a minority that's being created across this province through trauma, and we all suffered the abuses of our government towards us as people who decided to stand up. I assume both of us or all three of us are those kind of people. But what's happened is we now share a language. When you say digital currency, I know what you mean is you don't want government to give you a social credit score and basically tell you what you're allowed to spend money on and things like that. But everyone else hears, why don't you want to be able to send e-transfers, right?
Or Bitcoin or something.
Yes, exactly. So
Yep.
it's a language problem that we're up against. What I tell people is don't say you're against digital currency, just say you're against more government control in every area of your life. Just period. You don't want the government to have more control. That's it. Because that is something that people can understand. And the reason you say is every time throughout history, the more power a government has had, the worse it's been for their citizens. Right. So digital currency is something obviously that I understand what you're saying, but I just want to clarify that what we're opposing is the government having more power, not some specific policy of the government.
That's a good point. And I just want to highlight, you mentioned a few times that, part of the problem is we don't do enough, the voters, we don't know enough, we don't do enough, and you're not wrong. But just like the RCMP, there's only 3,000. There's only so many upper level leadership levels in the parties and stuff like that. So there's only so many people that can fill those. So what can other people lower down that are not as active, can't put in the work, and not going to be doing that, simply have their own lives? How could they become more active and more knowledgeable on what's actually going on? Because I'm blown away right now with the fact that you're right. There's an incentivized law to help the police force change. That's just as good as getting rid of the RCMP over time, but people don't know that. So how do we kind of, re-educate or educate or get the good information out? Because we're not getting it from anywhere else right now.
Well, I think it actually comes down to a large amount of, I call it democratic apathy or laziness, right? Because a lot of people don't realize that, they don't have to be an MP or an MLA or a premier or a president of the provincial board to have an impact. You can join your local constituency association for any party. Maybe you're maybe you still think that the PPC is a good idea. You can join that party. EDA. You can join the Conservative Party EDA. If you're a liberal, you can join the Liberal EDA, right? Those EDAs are little boards that represent the members to the MP. Now, people say, well, they don't have huge amounts of power. They're just there for volunteers. True, but how else are you going to learn to sit on a board? Most people have no idea how to sit on a board. They've never sat on a board. They don't know how their democracy works. And what I'm encouraging people to do is just start showing up. A lot of people complain to me about what's happening in our libraries across this province and really across North America. I gave 4 speeches last week, or 3 speeches last week, 4 since August 9th. At every one, we had over 250 people. And at every single one I asked, do you think horrible things are happening in our libraries? Please raise your hand. Almost everyone in the crowd always raises their hand. And then I asked this question: how many of you are sitting on your library boards? And the answer is almost always 0. And if people are going to complain about what's happening in their libraries and they're not going to bother to go and sit on their library boards, then we deserve everything that's happening to us. So what I tell people is, if you actually care, if you want things to change, then you have to be that change. Stop talking to politicians. Stop complaining. Stop wandering around on Facebook yelling and screaming about the latest thing that has enraged you. And instead, what you need to do is you need to go out and actually do something. And what Take Back Alberta does is we provide really clear, tangible actions that people can take. So, for example, the actions that people can take at our meetings right now. 1, you need to bring at least one other person to the next meeting, because there's only one thing that matters. A lot of people like to talk about ideas, and you see this in our social media age all the time. People are constantly typing away about policy or thoughts that they have or any of those sort of things. But I don't care about people's ideas. I want to make that very clear. I do not care how smart you think you are, if you figured out some policy to change the world. If you don't have people that follow you, you're not a leader. If you don't have people that are showing up with you when you show up, you're not a leader. And no matter how good your ideas are, if you don't have followers, you're not a leader. And so what I say to people is, you got to bring people. So start this way. You want to start this way. Invite 5 people. 1 will come, right? And then slowly we grow our numbers. And we are growing our numbers based on that principle along with others. And the second thing I say is, now you have to decide. What are you going to run for? Are you going to run for a municipal spot? Are you going to sit on a land use board? You have to go and participate in your democracy. And that doesn't mean voting. And that doesn't mean volunteering for your party. You have to become a leader. And that's what you're doing. That's running for MP. And whether you win or not, you are taking that step, right? And say, I'm going to put my name on the ballot. I'm going to run and I'm going to advocate for my ideas. Now we'll find out if people follow you. But that's what leadership is. It's stepping out and doing something. And it doesn't have to be MP and it doesn't have to be MLA. MP's hard. It's not hard to get on a school board. It's not hard. In fact, 1 in 4 school board people who get elected across this province don't even run against anybody because no one else bothers to challenge them. Right? There's so many different spots that people can run for. Municipal council, right? You don't even have to run for the parents' council for your school. You just have to apply to get on it. There are so many places that you can get involved in your society to make a difference. People just aren't doing it. Instead, they're sitting on Facebook and complaining about Danielle Smith or whatever whatever Pierre did or whoever. And then my admonishment to people is actually to follow your example, Jason, and just start running all over the place. Everybody needs to be running for the many different democratic positions across our democracy. And that's what's going to fix things. It's going to be people of integrity, grassroots, regular folk with common sense values, running for positions, sitting in the roles and making the decisions. That's how you change society.
That's inspiring. And thank you. Thank you for that. And yes, that's kind of my mission as well. I would like to see a whole bunch of people stand up as independents. It's a tough road. It's very difficult. We get all that. That's not really the point. The point is to get out there and talk, get more people interested in the idea of independent politicians and possibly support them. It's a tough road, but the messaging needs to get out there. And I'm very impressed with your messaging so far, David. There's one question that came up I think is pretty valid right now. In Ontario, is there an equivalent in Ontario, something similar to Take Back America? Are you aware of anything in Ontario?
No, unfortunately, there isn't anything in Ontario that I'm aware of that's like Take Back Alberta. The problem with Ontarians, as has been the problem with Albertans, as has been the problem with conservatives in general. And I say this, my parents are Ontarians. I lived in Ontario for 10 years. All of my extended family lives in Ontario, but I was born here. Mm-hmm. But I would say that they just started another party. And in fact, if you look at Jim Cariolis and Derek Sloan, their egos both got too big and they both had to start a party. And that just shows you the ineptitude of conservatives at the grassroots level across this country. Is they think that the best move is to start a party and lose. And in fact, they both started a party. They both lost. And Doug Ford got another majority government despite having some of the worst lockdowns in the world and some of the worst mandates in the world. So, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you like new parties or not, or you think they're a good idea. The real world results speak for themselves. They don't work. And if you want to make a change, then you need to work a little harder than just going off and starting your own thing. But we are starting a Take Back Saskatchewan and a Take Back Manitoba. Both of those, I've had meetings at launch. Now, I want to be clear, those are people in those provinces doing what I'm doing here. I'm just advising them on how we did it here. I'm 100% laser focused on Alberta. After we're done with the annual general meeting, we are moving to the school boards, and we're going to be spending the next 2 years focused only on school boards and making sure that we get as many of those as possible. And the beauty of that is people who go and vote for school board also vote in the municipal. And we have some real problems with our big city mayors, particularly in this province. And we need a concerted effort to fight back against the woke agenda that's being pushed through our municipalities, particularly Calgary and Edmonton. But Lethbridge is pretty bad too. And I wouldn't even say Red Deer is very good right now. I think this is what I tell people. I say, look, you're right. A small fringe minority with unacceptable views is taking over all of your institutions. All of them, your legal system, your healthcare system, your education system. But you have to understand why they've taken it over. Like, people like to wander around and be like, the World Economic Forum is coming. And, they're not the real problem. The real problem is a religion that has taken over our society. It is a cult. It is a Gnostic religion. And it is basically communism for North American style is what we're facing. And though the people who are running for these positions, for school board, for library board, for all of these small, for municipal council, these people truly believe in the righteousness of their mission. They are true believers, and they show up and they push that agenda themselves. They don't need to be told to do it by some higher up person in the World Economic Forum. They believe it. They believe it with their whole heart. And if we don't show up and fight back against this minority view of what's going on, and basically the sexualization of our children, like you were talking about, all of the things that are happening. This is an agenda. This is a clear battle strategy for what I call, the North American Cultural Revolution. And the example that I use for that is Discovery Math. It's a great example. I had a mother come to me and say, my son is learning this Discovery Math. And I just went to the teacher and said, I'm just going to teach him how I know, because I don't understand this Discovery Math. And a lot of parents have encountered this problem, right? Is that they're teaching math differently than they ever taught us math. Why are they doing that? Well, if you come home and your parents can't even do basic math with you because they've made it so complicated, what's going to happen? You're going to lose some respect for your parents. You're going to think they don't understand basic things about how the world works. You're going to think they're backwards and ignorant. Right. And you're going to create a divide between parents and children. Now, this is not a new strategy. This is what Mao did in China for the Cultural Revolution, to create the Red Guard that he used to destroy his enemies. And then once he was done destroying his enemies, he had the People's Liberation Army destroy the Red Guard, right? That's what's happening. That's a big part of what we're up against. If you want like really detailed and articulate thoughts on this, there's a fellow named James Lindsay, used to be left-wing, has come to the light and is a great podcaster. His podcast is New Discourses, and he summarizes this stuff very, very well.
Yeah, I'll reach out to him. So, Padge, James Lindsay, you said?
It would be hard to get him on. He's been on Joe Rogan 3 times and Jordan Peterson once. Very, very busy man. But I am bringing him to Alberta for 2 speeches, one in Edmonton and one in Calgary in October. So,
okay, well,
that, I'll send you the details on that.
Sure. I mean, and if he wants any Alberta podcasting press before he comes, that may be a good time to introduce him. Yeah, so maybe it'll help people get out there. So I'd be willing to do that, like one show for both.
Yeah, I'll try to get him on Sean Newman and the Social Disorder podcast as well too. So maybe we get him on all 3 if we can.
Sounds great. That sounds really awesome. Okay, so Donald, I've heard some really good things here. There's no Take Back Ontario yet, but what you're hearing here, what are you thinking? Do you think Ontario may have a need for this, or are they too far gone already?
Well, first of all, David, I just signed up for your newsletter at your website. Okay.
Perfect.
Look, a lot of what you're saying makes sense, especially we can take back the educational boards. We can do that if we put our minds to it. Absolutely, we can do that. And we have to. And that's where we have to start. I totally agree with you. And if you're going to bring 2,000 people to the annual general meeting, you're going to have a huge, huge impact. And I've read your website. I see some of the positions that you're taking on the, once again, the foundational things that we're all concerned about. You've spoken about them here. So, okay, I hope you're successful. If I was in Alberta, that might happen. You never know. If I was in Alberta, I'd be paying very close attention to your organization. I agree with the goals. There are some questions that people have. They're even in the chats right now because we've been betrayed so often. Now, I understand. I've been in a party that went nowhere, and I've supported parties that go nowhere. But sometimes they provide a touchstone for the larger party that they have to see and appreciate. Maybe that impacts them that way. I don't know. But I know that the Conservative Party and the Liberals, not so much the NDP, are a big machine, just a big machine, and it's tough sometimes for an individual to make a difference. You seem to have found a way around that. or to enhance that with 2,000 individuals going to the annual general meeting. I wish you luck, and I hope that you have every success there in doing what you say you're going to do on the website. And that's it. I like what you're saying. I like what I'm hearing. I like what you're going to do. I think you're very inspiring. Yes, those of us who can have to run for the smaller offices and start taking this place back all across Canada. So good for you.
I'd like to give one example on that, actually, that I'm quite happy with, is that I've been going to the same location. I won't give them away because the media will report on it, as they've been doing on pretty much everything that I say, even what I tweet lately. But a small community in rural Alberta, not far from one of the major cities, they recently took over the entire library board. They just started to show up, and 5 or 6 of them got on it, and now they have a majority on it, and now they're changing the things that are happening in their library. And I'm frankly tired of all these politicians that go around acting like they're the only ones that can save us. I don't think they are. I think that I think we are the only ones that can save ourselves, and that actually that's going to take a lot of effort.
I'm impressed with you, David. Okay, and I certainly want to talk to you more after this, and maybe get more involved in what you're working on. Thank you for taking the time on this. This is cool. I have a question here in our folder. What positions do you hold with Ditchley? Is that spelled right? Ditchley?
Yeah.
Ditchley is on board with the 2030 agenda. It shows you are on the board of directors. What's Ditchley? It's the first time I've heard of that.
So the board of directors for Ditchley is kind of a volunteer position because it's a not-for-profit organization that basically holds conferences, right? They hold, and it's not like they don't go around saying that they control leaders or anything like that. They just bring people together to have discussions. Now, the reason they want to be on the board is kind of the same reason that they would want, it's kind of to have a right-wing voice. They wanted someone that disagrees with a lot of the people there to make the discussion more interesting and to actually have have another perspective. And so if you look at their website, they talk about, they have people from all walks of life. They have what's called localists and globalists. They have a whole variety of people involved in their organization. In my case, I'm a localist, and I've been very vocal at every Ditchley meeting that I've ever attended about democracy, about the importance of populism, about all of the things that I've said to you, I say there. I think that if we abandon any organization that has different agenda than us, then you're not going to be able to join any school boards because they've all passed things for the 2030 agenda. You're not going to be able to run for office for a municipality because many of the municipalities have deals with the World Economic Forum. If we have to be ideologically pure, and this is a problem within the freedom movement, is that people are looking everywhere for the bad guys, right? But my track record speaks for itself. I don't feel that I have to defend it. I opposed Jason Kenney because he arrested pastors. I stood up against the vaccine mandates. I stood with the people of Coutts when people told me I shouldn't be involved with them because they were too toxic. If I'm a plant, then you're all doomed because there's nobody that's actually doing more for the freedom movement in this province right now than I am. And very few, maybe a couple, I'm not aware of them though, who've sacrificed more than I have to hold our politicians accountable. So I don't apologize for sitting on the Ditchley board. I'm very happy to be part of an organization that is open to having people like us. They didn't kick me off because I was unvaccinated. They didn't make it a requirement that vaccines had to be to sit on the board. I think the answer speaks for itself.
Okay, and that's a fair answer. So it's a board of various people. And is it more like a think tank, or are they coming up with policy?
It's not even quite think tank level. Think of it literally like a big book club, right? Like it's like a bunch of people get together and discuss ideas, and it's very open. And frankly, I've had the opportunity to meet very significant right-wing leaders like Preston Manning was also there. I've been at a conference with him. I've been at a conference with Peter Thiel. It's a very interesting organization that is doing a lot of cool work, particularly on democracy. And that's what I'm focused on. I care about the future of democracy.
Okay, and you were on a podcast or on a show yesterday, Ryan Jesperson. How do you say that last name?
Yeah.
Jesperson. And there was a comment about democracy is more important than the unborn. Can you clarify that? Like, what do you mean by that? And then, did you say that?
No, I didn't say that I think that democracy is more important than the unborn.
That's why I want to clear up the confusion.
I said that the pro-life cause is one that I care about very deeply, but it is not my primary cause. It's not the thing that I feel called to be fighting on. I am pro-life personally, but I understand that many, many people aren't, and that if we want to get anything done on any issue, that is not the argument that I'm interested in having with people. I honestly, the pandemic really impacted my view on these things. I want sovereignty over my own body, and I want everyone to have sovereignty over their own body. I don't want the government telling me what to do with it, period, end of story. And so that kind of has changed my perspective a little bit. But of course, I believe that the unborn are human, and it's a very complex issue. It's not the issue that I'm working on. Democracy is what I'm working on, because I believe that if we want to get anything done, including on issues of pro-life, but on any issue, period, that if we don't have democracy, then we're just going to have tyranny. So in that sense, I actually do believe that democracy is more foundational than the pro-life issue, but obviously the issue of life is one of the most important issues.
Got you. So what you're trying to say there is we're not ideologically pure. You're never going to get a group that has all these same ideological and then have enough to move it forward, or you're not going to get your numbers. So what you're saying there is not democracy over pro-life or anything like that. It's democracy is important, and without it, you're going to have like no infrastructure to do anything else anyways. But you are definitely pro-life.
I am 100% on a personal level pro-life. I do not believe in the government enforcing its morality on others. Also, I am a libertarian in that sense. I do not believe the government should be enforcing its morality. In fact, what I would really like to see, and I was actually just talking to someone about James Lindsay about this yesterday, is I would love to see this go down and not be a federal or provincial issue, and have it be a local county issue. Like if we were deciding this on the municipal level, I think things would be a lot better, personally.
And you're talking about the abortion issue. So you think it should be a regional issue, not a provincial.
Not even provincial. I think we should have it down to the municipal level. Like that.
I'd like to see that.
I'd like to see that. Because I tell you, there's a lot of people in rural Alberta who don't want abortion around, and they could live in communities where that wasn't happening. But Edmonton and Calgary might feel differently. I don't know. But the point is, we're making this like the issue for federal and provincial politics when they barely deal with that issue. Like, yes, I understand it's in the criminal code and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know. I think we're going about it wrong.
What if we were able to get Alberta as a start, not as the end, but as a start, to at least have autonomy on healthcare, so we can make decisions here in Alberta that other provinces may not make? For example, a moratorium on maybe maids or abortion here in Alberta as a start. Is that attainable, or you think it really needs to go down to the local level first?
Well, let's speak for a moment to Danielle Smith, right? Danielle Smith is both pro-choice and pro-maid, right? She is a libertarian. She's not a social conservative. She's never claimed to be. She didn't do what Kenny did, stand up and tell everyone he's pro-life and things like that, and then not do anything on it. She's been very clear. Those are not the issues. She doesn't agree with social conservatives on those issues. And she's not lying. She's just very obvious about it. So, and honestly, I don't think any politician in Canada right now, maybe with the exception of here in Alberta, would have a chance of getting elected if they held those positions. So I think it's a problem, right? And I think we have to figure out what we as a society want to do in terms of encouraging people to have children, period. Because our society teaches people that children are a burden, that it ruins a woman's life. all of these things, our messaging on having children, period, is very, very bad as a society, and rightly so in some contexts. The pro-choice people accuse the pro-life people of only caring about life before birth, right? What about after birth, right? What about how people live? So I actually think we don't have a good handle on this issue at all as a society. And I think we need actually more public discussion on it. But right now it's so taboo to have any sort of discussion on it at all. The left has done a much better job of framing this issue than we have.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's about
I have
dignity and
to
other things.
I have to agree with David on a lot of things. When we started the Family Coalition Party back in the mid 80s in Ontario, it was basically pro-life. That was our number one platform. And, you know, we did pretty well. We did 10%, but it'll never do any more than that. Never, and certainly not now. I've changed my position on abortion to be one that, like with me, the information, education, the realization of what a baby looks like at 3 months and 4 months in the womb, that changed everything for me when I was a young man. It changed my position. And I really think that it has to be a matter of education. And yes, there are other things that have to come along. We can stop the subsidies from government to the pro-abortion groups. They're just running free with money, public money. We must stop that. But in the end, it's going to be this battle for hearts and minds. And when people realize what a baby is in the womb, because they've been taught to believe it's some little bit of jello or something, they really have. But I tend to agree with David. It's the third rail of politics. You touch that, you can't accomplish anything else. Not today, not in this society. Doesn't mean you can't work for it. But if it's your primary focus, where you even allow the others to pretend it is, or make you into something that you're not in your position, just on that one issue, you'll fail politically. I don't know if David would agree with me on that.
I agree 100%. I don't think there's a path right now on that issue. I think they say that politics is downstream from culture. And of course, culture is downstream from religion, right? Culture almost always is an expression of faith. Now, people don't agree with that necessarily, but that's, a lot of sociologists would agree with that. I think the pro-life movement in Canada should be focused on the culture far more than they should be focused on politics, because they're never going to win the political battle when the culture is where it is right now.
Would you call woke communism, do you call that a religion?
Absolutely.
I thought you would.
Yes, for sure.
I agree with you.
Sure. And here's how I would call it: a transhumanist religion, a Gnostic transhumanist religion. So, and why would I say it's Gnostic? Well, Gnosticism teaches that you are actually a God, not that you're made in the image of God, but that you are actually a God who's becoming aware of being a God. That's Gnosticism. And Gnosticism started in the garden, right? You will be like God. You will be equal to God. You will be God. And when I say that it's, that it's transhuman, well, okay, so if you're a God, why can't you then just say, I'm a man or a woman? You determine your reality, right? You are above reality itself. And you say, well, I was born in the wrong body. That's transhumanism. That's believing that you've transcended reality and are above reality, and you determine reality.
And you know better. Exactly.
And that's a religion. That's a religion.
Mm-hmm.
It's an old one.
Now,
Very, very old.
So do we bring back religion? Do we make it cool again? Do we make religion great again? What do we do here to get people back on track? Because, like you said, it's got to be a cultural shift. It's like a cultural war. So do we bring God back? Do we bring the idea that you're not a self-God? How do we assist with that? Are we on the right track with that thinking?
Well, I'm a big believer in the separation of church and state. I think that the founding fathers were very right with that. I just think we need to broaden our definition of what a church is and what a religion is, right? But I do not believe that we should be bringing faith into faith should always govern our principles and our character. But I don't believe that I should enforce my faith on you. And I think that's
Correct.
inherently a Christian principle, because Jesus doesn't say you have to follow me. Like, he doesn't force people to follow him. He asks them, he says, come and follow me, right? But he gives you the choice. Now, the choice to not follow him is obviously negative within the Christian context, right? But the choice is given. And I think myself, I'll speak for myself, as a Christian, I have to allow people the choice to do what they want, right? Because that choice is given by God. I believe that is choice is given to us by God. So I don't think that we should be enforcing religion. No, I don't think that we should be indoctrinating people. But I do believe that we need to, as a society, come to some first principles. Like, these are the things that we believe to be true. And I hope and pray that those first principles would be aligned with reality. Right now, we are not aligned with reality. Now, there's a reason for that, right? This is just basic communism, right? This is how communists work. And I saw someone comment in the chat saying blaming this on communism doesn't weed out corruption in our own party. Well, no one's done more in this province to weed corruption out of the UCP than I have. So I'm obviously good on that front. But I'm not talking about parties. I'm talking about ideologies which stand below parties and influence parties. I'm talking about culture. And communism is not a political party. Communism is an ideology. And the kind of ideology that we're up against right now is just an old ideology. Like, Klaus Schwab was not the first person to say, you will own nothing and be happy. That was Karl Marx. Right? This is what happens. And I really encourage your listeners to go and listen to the new Discourses podcast with James Lindsay, because he outlines this way better than I can. But what it really comes down to is this: a cultural revolution requires the dismantling of institutions and chaos. They have to bring chaos. And what's the best way to bring chaos? Convince people of lies. Right? Get them to believe in lies. If you believe in a lie, then you're not aligned with reality, and things are going to disintegrate.
Agree. And this is one of the messages I say a lot to people. Like, we don't need to tear it all down. Have some faith. We need to repair. We need to reform, but not reset. Like, that reset word is a scary one. And is that what you're saying? You're saying, like, look, we don't need to tear this down and start all over. We need to repair, and we need to consistently be doing that, improving it. Is that kind of your thinking?
Like, fundamentally, my message is this: your system is not broken. You are. And if you want to fix your system, in the words of Jordan Peterson, you got to clean your room. You got to realize that you've been neglecting your civic duty. You've not been showing up. You've not been engaged in your own governance. You haven't been engaged in your democracy. And no, I'm sorry, voting does not count as being engaged in your democracy. You should be volunteering. You should be showing up. You should be running for office. And the fact that we aren't is the national sin of this country. We are a democratically apathetic people. And that's why we're here. And if you want to fix that, first you have to fix yourself, which means that you have to get engaged and involved. And people say, well, I don't know how politics works, and it's big and scary. I said, well, how do you learn how to do anything in life? You do it, right? You have to just go out and do it.
Would it be fair to say that at this stage we are politically traumatized? We have been beaten down by the parties. We've been beaten down by the government. There's a lot of people that stop voting. There's a lot of people that say it can't be fixed. My vote doesn't matter. You hear things like vote splitting. We have all of this messaging and all this trauma coming from a government level as well, or a party level. Are we traumatized? Do we need to kind of take our head out of it, relook at how this happens, get more invigorated, like get excited to get out to there? Because right now there's a lot of people that don't even want to vote, like we talked about earlier in this one. And it's more than just messaging. Like what you're doing with Take Back Alberta bring one person with you, ask 5, bring one with you. Is that the same way forward in this? Let's talk to our neighbors and bring them to the school board meeting, bring them to the library board meeting, and do the same type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that we need thicker skins. Like people are traumatized. I mean, my ancestors went and fought in the wars and died for freedom. People don't want to vote because they think the system's too corrupt. That's just an excuse. And in the words of Jocko Willits, all of your excuses are lies.
I like that message right there. Absolutely. So we have a couple more questions here I'll bring up. How do you feel about Agenda 2030? How do you feel about the 2030 agenda?
I'm 100% opposed to any UN or global agenda of any kind. I am a believer in local decision making.
Yeah, me too. And I believe we need to take the power from up back down.
100%.
Back to the grassroots.
That's what my whole
anything that anything that heads up is the wrong direction. We have to bring it back.
Yeah.
Did you watch the POEC, and are you paying attention to what Rouleau's coming out with his recommendations around more centralized policing? It looks like he's going to be looking for some sort of centralized intelligence or policing that actually has power over municipal police, by the way. That's one of the things that the POEC talked about a lot, was who can take over the police station if it's gone bad, gone rogue, not working, not doing their thing. And this is what they kept pointing to the OPS for, Ottawa Police Services. So I'm really concerned that Rouleau's new recommendations are going to include some sort of regulatory body nationwide that has the power to go in and take over police stations. Because we heard about a lot of that kind of talk was missing. This is like they were talking about how if we had this, Ottawa Police Services would have handled it better, yada, yada. What I see is globalism on the police force happening in Canada. So that there's one organization here in Canada, maybe reporting higher up, but also has the ability to commandeer and take over local police stations. I assure you that you probably are against that, but what do you think we can do about that if that's actually the direction that Rouleau's recommendations are heading?
Well, it's all about taking more sovereignty, period. It's about first taking sovereignty yourself, right? And saying, actually, no, I can impact things and I need to go and do that. But it's on all levels. We need to move decision making locally. So when people think laws are these, things that can't be changed and there's nothing we can do about them, and once a law is there, the laws are only as good as the people who obey them, right? And if we believe that what we are encountering now is is an attempt to overthrow Western democracy, which it obviously is, that's what we're up against, right? Then we need to be a little bit smarter about these things, right? We need to say, hey, oh no, they passed the law, now we're defeated. Like, it's like you were just describing all of these people are like, I don't even want to vote, everything's corrupt, it's all broken. Who do you think benefits from that? It's exactly the people they claim that they're fighting. If we don't stand up and say, no, we don't want a national, oversight body for all of our policing. If we don't want that, now we could just say we don't want that, and then when it gets passed, oh, we're defeated. Or like Bill C-18, right? Oh no, now they've why are you even doing this podcast anymore? We're all censored, and the government's taking away all our rights. Well, no, people are still listening to you, and we can still get the word out. It's just a little bit harder. I think, frankly, people are lazy and they don't want to do the work. Now, this is what I've encountered. Or if they're not lazy and they don't want to do the work, they don't know what the work is to do. My answer to you want to stop this policing thing? Well, you better be the one in your local municipality that's not allowing that to pass. You better be the person that is showing up and helping your MLA get elected. So when they come looking for advice from people, you're one of the people they come and get advice from. There's so many ways to be involved. And if you're not involved, it's because, and laws can change, right? The wheat board, people went to jail over the wheat board. There's no wheat board anymore, right? If this policing thing comes through and we work hard enough, we can get rid of it, right? That's the reality of the situation, but it's not what people want, because people want a silver bullet, like anything in life. People want a pill to take so they don't get fat instead of just controlling what they eat. The list goes on.
Yeah, they become dependent in a bunch of different ways, and laziness is a dependency as well, as believe it or not. And you're dependent on other people to care for you or fix your problems that uh, you didn't take seriously yourself. Now, for example, when we were doing our research for the Coutts situation, we were looking at the gun rules and regulations, and we actually looked up the ballistic vests rule in or laws here in Alberta, which basically says you can't have anything that can stop a bullet or projectile unless you get special permission, unless you're part of a certain group, unless you have a permit from the government. Now, if you break that particular law down there, David, that's just a law to make you squishy for when the government bullet is headed towards you. It's not really for accidental hunting incidences. It's not because your neighbor is annoyed with you and you need to be able to stop a bullet. It's because the government themselves created a law that keeps you squishy for their bullets. There's an example of where there's a law that we really shouldn't be complying with because it's only to our detriment if we do. And the day that you need it is the day when the government shows up and they want to make you squishy, is the day you won't have it if you follow their laws. So I'm looking at this as an example of a law which is not in your best interest at all. And it actually makes you very prone to death if the government decides to do that. So what would you say to that kind of realization and insight that that would be a particular one that you really should not be complying with and possibly standing up for, challenging in the court or something? Because that's just simply a law that keeps you squishy from the government's perspective. And why do they want you squishy? Well, they want the bullet to be effective on you. So what do you think about that insight?
Well, I would just say that if we get to that point, right, where the government's decided that they want to deal with us as squishy, I don't think there's anything that we can do. Right. I mean, I have a friend who was raised in communist Yugoslavia, right? So it's now Serbia, Bosnia, a lot of different countries, but it used to be communist Yugoslavia. And he said, when they show up at your door to take your food and your guns away, they don't show up with one guy, right? There's not like you can have some epic gun, like people are like, well, they can come and take them from my cold, dead hands. When they show up with 50 guys,
it's already too late.
doesn't matter what you do. Right. So I actually don't think that the best, method is self-defense. I think it's an offense, and it's a political offense. We don't let them become the tyrants that come to our door. Right. We stop them before that happens, because once that happens, I don't think it's going to matter whether you're wearing a vest or not.
Okay, well, good point. And you were taking my example there literally. What I kind of meant there was example of a law that really shouldn't exist, and we should be pushing back and maybe revoking or repealing, because frankly, it only hurts us. And that's just one example. There's many.
And as
many.
citizens, we should always be looking for those laws, right? We should be looking for the wheat board is a great example. What, you can't sell your wheat to who you want to? The government has to do it. Maybe we should look at supply management. Right? Maybe we should look at the fact that we pay way more for our eggs and milk, and that a bunch of dairy farmers basically have this entire country by the balls. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of examples of bad laws in this country that are hurting people, that are not in our best interest, that are in the best interest of the people who got them passed. And how'd they get them passed? Well, they stood to benefit. The problem is that a lot of people suffer a little with your egg and milk prices, so nobody really does anything about it, and a small group of people benefit massively, right? And those people who benefit massively will put the work in to get the result they want, whereas all those people who are getting hurt a little bit won't do anything. It's a frog boiling in a pot.
Okay. I have a couple more questions here on my notes, and then a couple in the chat. And then we're pretty much wrapped up unless you want to keep going. The first one I have is, what's the current, can you talk about phase 5 at the AGM? You're trying to move some things forward there. But overall, what is Take Back Alberta's main focus for the next, say, year?
Well, up until November, our focus is the annual general meeting for the United Conservative Party. Then after that, we'll move our focus to the school boards. And that will be a 2-year project, because the school board election is in 2025. We'll obviously continue to encourage people to join constituency associations. There will be 2 more AGMs between now and then for the United Conservative Party. But the main focus is educating people on how their system works and showing them the pressure points where they can get involved to have the most impact. I mean, we only had 900 people show up at the annual general meeting last year, and we won every single spot on the board, right? So it doesn't take many people being involved to have a major impact. And if you go and Google Take Back Alberta, you'll see that every major news outlet in the country is bashing me and making claims about, who I am and that I'm a right-wing extremist, blah, blah, blah.
You're over the target then.
They don't, mainstream media doesn't talk about people who aren't having an impact.
Correct. Yeah, if you hear your name in mainstream media, then you absolutely have their attention in the right way. A quick question: AGM, is that in-person voting only, or can you vote remotely?
And you have to spend $200 for a ticket to attend. But those are the only. Well, you have to be a member of the party. You have to register, which is $200. We got it down from $375 last year, which I'm very happy about. But obviously, it costs money to hold these events. But you can even register at the door if you're a member 21 days before the vote. But yes, it's in-person voting only.
Okay, and that's Calgary this year or every year?
Calgary this year. I want it to be in Red Deer every year because it's in the middle. And it doesn't make any sense to me that we keep going back and forth. And there's too many games that can be played if it's in different locations every year. But if it's the same location and it's in the middle, that makes more sense to me.
Hey, push that one. It's not on the agenda for this year, though, right?
I don't think that's on the agenda for this year, no.
Okay. And then we go to the questions that have started here now. All right. Phil says, why can't his politicians figure out what the leading cause of death is in Alberta? Yeah, so we had unknown deaths as a leading cause in Alberta, 3,000 something. And there's this big debate on what that is. We are on YouTube, so let's be a little bit careful how we talk about this one. But yeah, what's your take on them ignoring that issue altogether?
Well, I don't know that they're ignoring that issue. I think they actually are looking into it, but I think the real problem here is that AHS is changing their categories, right? They had a lot more categories before, and they're lowering the number of categories, cause of deaths that they have. I mean, I think we all know what's happening. I don't really think I have to tell you.
Yeah, this. I think we can all figure it out.
I mean, do you want to be the politician that comes out and tells 80% of people that the party you're involved in got, everyone injected with an experimental drug, right? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. Sorry to the person who asked the question, but people don't like getting bad news, and people don't want. I even heard Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh down in the States on the Daily Wire talking about this recently. Every time DeSantis brings up COVID, he goes down in the polls. Why? Well, the answer is simple.
A lot of people have it.
People don't want to talk about COVID anymore. Most people are not interested in talking about this. And I'm talking the vast, vast majority of people. If you had injected yourself with an experimental drug, would you want to be reminded of that all the time? No.
Correct.
You just wouldn't. And we can pretend that the world is how we would like it to be, but the truth of the matter is people want to move on. People are moving on. And while I obviously care deeply about this issue and sacrificed a lot on it, I understand it's just not what people are interested in anymore.
No, I agree with you on that one. That's another type of abuse because they had those decisions forced on them in a lot of cases. Some people went and grabbed because they wanted it, but some people were coerced or they were under some sort of threat. You can't come for Christmas, even as low as that kind of threat. But I did recognize this a good year ago that when we get into the phase of harm, depression and guilt are going to become very, very significant amongst a large portion of our group if it's tackled in such a way that we told you, you're sore, you're hurt now. We'd have to have a different way to deal with it. And I think we're in that phase right now. Are we going to comfort them? Are we going to help them? Do we need an apology from them? Like those of us that were persecuted by them? What would be a clean way to go forward and not split or divide us any further on this particular issue and actually kind of unify around healing instead of dividing ourselves around hurt?
Well, ultimately, the reason this happened is because we gave too much power to too few people, period. The reason that it occurred to us is that a small group of people were able to tell us all what to do, and we did it. Now,
Mhm.
I didn't do it, and probably both of you didn't do it, but most people did. And the reason for that is not because we were, tricked or anything like that. It's because we stopped paying attention, and they took control of our entire society while we were kind of making money or raising families or thinking that, our politicians were good people. The truth of the matter is power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And what is absolute power? It's centralized power. And
Mhm.
so the answer to the problem of how do we deal with this is heal. We have to heal, but really we have to repent. We have to repent for our apathy. We have not everybody, but many people have done nothing about their government, and yet they expected it not to be corrupted. The reason it was corrupted was because they weren't doing anything.
Okay, that's a good answer. Donald, do you want to follow up on that?
It's true what he's saying. What David is saying is true. And I look at it in policing too. Nobody wants their son or daughter to be a police officer these days. And this is having significant impacts on law enforcement, on who becomes a police officer, who is involved in law enforcement, who makes the decisions on the street and all the way up the chain. And if you don't participate, then you have no right to complain. And that's what that boils down to in policing, and in medicine, in anything. I think David has been saying some good truths here, and I also think that his intent, or the intent of the organization, to start locally at the bottom, at the education, the library, municipal elections, that's the way to go. We have to take it back. We simply have to take it back.
Take back Alberta, 100%. There's a couple more questions here. And David, great job, by the way. What is your stance on climate change or climate boiling or whatever the term is now?
Well, even if it is real, there's nothing that we can do about it in Alberta besides this. So this is why I know that the climate change stuff is a cult, because supposedly the problem is that there's too much CO2 in the atmosphere, and we're putting too much greenhouse gases, they say, into the atmosphere. Well, the main culprits of this are the people burning coal or dung or wood. And that is happening in places like Japan and India and China. And if we got them on natural gas, we could eliminate all of Canada's emissions as a share of global emissions, right? Just by doing that. So that should be our number one focus as a country, because even if we turned off all our lights, didn't produce another gigajoule of power, did nothing, I just shut down the cars, all walked into the dark, mutual suicide, we would have no impact on global emissions, because we are 1.4 to 1.5% of total emissions right now. And what we're seeing is an increase of 8% in China and India over the last couple of years. So even by their own math and science, a carbon tax doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Us suffering here in Canada and flagellating ourselves for the sake of the climate cult does not make a difference. So why are they making us do it? Well, the answer is simple. It's redistribution. It's centralization of power, and it's taking money from those who have and giving it to those who don't. That's what it is.
So how would you, I guess there's no real way to tackle it, because you would need a top-down approach. Like Canada can't tell China to stop burning wood or anything like that. And being a localist, you would expect them to deal with it themselves. But when there is something that's globally impactful, like burning of the wood in China, India, Japan, is it up to their neighbors to complain about it? Or what's your real take, being a localist, on that issue?
I think that technology is the solution, right? We
To
should
innovate.
we should be selling them natural gas, which is a better fuel for everything. Or I 100% believe in this. We should be building as much nuclear as we can. Why? It's the cheapest, easiest to produce energy, and the more energy we have, the wealthier we are.
Mm-hmm.
And wealth is energy, right? That
Right.
energy is what pushes everything.
Okay, so I saw somewhere alternate energy, Alberta, maybe start pushing that more. I know that we do solar and wind as well, but you'd like nuclear, and you'd like to see us sell more light natural gas or natural gas. And those are some of the things. Are you pushing that through Take Back Alberta? Are you pushing that onto the
No,
UCP?
that's, I mean, when people ask me about climate change or when I speak publicly, I do talk about this, but no, we only really have three major policies that we're pushing. We got to get rid of the tabulators. They've got to
Okay.
go. No more electronic voting. No more lockdowns ever, no matter what, and no more mandates for medical mandates. You have to do this in order to do this. So those are our three key, and that's what everyone basically has to agree on if they want to be part of Take Back Alberta. Like, you're not going to have a good time at Take Back Alberta if you don't agree with those three things. But if you agree with those three things, we have atheists, we have Muslims, we have Sikhs involved, we have people from all walks of life, all faiths. I've got a lot of people that used to be NDP and Liberal supporters, but all of this happened and they've come over, and I welcome all these people, because really this is about democracy. And I think democracy is the best form of government that we've ever tried. It is, as Churchill said, it's messy, there's problems, but I do think that as far as human freedom and flourishing goes, freedom is essential, and democracy is the only path we've ever really had to freedom.
Okay, and what's your Facebook page, the real one? I guess there's a couple.
Well, it's called Take Back Alberta, and it has 4.7 thousand likes and 6.4 thousand followers.
Okay, so Padge, if you can maybe find that one and share it with the chat group. Donald, yeah, I can go to you next, but I'm pretty good. This is a great interview. Do you have any more questions?
No, I don't. I think he's covered a lot of bases. And David, I hear what you're saying, and I think you convinced me on a few parts. We weren't that far apart.
No,
see
I don't
where
think,
I vote.
don't think we were. I agree.
Yeah, no. And are you on the school board? Are you running for a library board? Where are you putting some of that time?
Oh no, honestly, every moment of my day is taken up with. I have a new child on the way any day now,
Congratulations.
so I'm focused on that. And then I run Take Back Alberta as an organization, so I'm the executive director. So that takes up almost all of my time, and then I also have to make money in order to pay for all these things. So I do some. I raise capital for small startups, so startup businesses that are.
Oh, cool.
So that's another part of what
Angel
I do.
seed funding, that kind of level.
No, I'm not nearly at that level. I'm talking like I've raised maybe 4 or 5 million over the course of my time doing it, but yeah, it's fun. I like it. I love entrepreneurs. I'm the biggest fan of entrepreneurs, because I think those are the lifeblood of any society. So I just kind of go and try to help the ones that I believe in get the capital they need to actually execute their vision. Some of them, aren't able to do it, and others do a great job. So it's high risk, but I like it.
Yeah, that's my background. Entrepreneur, did that for quite some time. Built some businesses, sold them off. We homeschool as well. We're homesteading as well. And Donald, yes, we have chickens. That's one of the questions you like to ask. Yes. So I would encourage a lot of people to go into that lifestyle as well, because you are self-sufficient and you don't depend as much or very little on the government. One of the hardest troubles, though, is healthcare, because I can't do home surgeries yet. That's not something I'm capable of doing. Healthcare is a major concern. We had one of the questions that asked, how did healthcare become a monopoly in Alberta? Is there a party that's responsible for that? I think you're going to tell us the people are responsible. And is there a way to fix that up? Do you think we should have a hybrid, private system, a dual system, some parallel system? Because I'm very afraid of AHS right now as a conservative that's going to need some healthcare in the future. And like we saw, transplants were denied to people, and other things became life and death for sure. What's your take on that? Because that was one of the questions they had about the monopolization of AHS and also the WEF partnership with AHF.
I can actually blame someone for that, and his name is Tommy Douglas. He came up with the idea of universal healthcare in Canada. I introduced it in Saskatchewan, and then it went across the country because it was seen as successful. Look, I am a conservative to my core. I've given my life to the Conservative Party, frankly, for a long time. Then I realized that politicians didn't really care about me, and that's why I started Take Back Alberta, because I know how the system works. And I'll say this: we're never going to be able to get private healthcare in this country as it stands right now. It's just not going to happen. Canadians don't want it, but we can bust up monopolies. And I think the best way to bust up monopolies is you still have the government pay for the healthcare, but you have competition in providers. So you have various different people who offer their medical services. You, as a consumer of those services, can pick where you want to go, and then that gets charged to the government. Right now, we have two monopolies. It's not just one. It's not just we have a monopoly of who can pay, single payer. Only the government can pay for your healthcare, and only the government can provide your healthcare. And I think that is the biggest issue. At least get rid of one of the monopolies. I don't think that Canadians in general care that it's a single provider, but they do want the government paying for their healthcare. It's just something that Canadians really seem to care about. So my recommendation would be AHS needs competition, right? We need private surgical centers that are getting paid for by the government, but we need things like that, in my opinion.
Okay, so it's not really a hybrid. It's just competition in the healthcare system itself.
We need
so
competition in the healthcare system, and we need competition in the educational system. We have it way better in the educational system. We have charter schools, private schools, Catholic schools, religious schools,
homeschools. Yeah.
Those are great, right? And I would like to see more of that kind of model provided in our healthcare.
Okay, and that could be regional. Like you can totally do that on a municipal regional level.
Oh yeah. Well, and like my fundamental belief is what's called subsidiarity, which means that we need to move decision making as local as we can on as much as we can. And so obviously I want the dismantling of the AHS Super Board for sure. It needs to be made regional.
Okay, and so doctors, for example, Macus, if he still had his license or whatnot, he could just open up his own practice, compete against the hospital.
Yeah, and then the clients, the patients would decide which doctors they wanted to go to instead of AHS.
Correct.
Deciding. Yeah.
And still paid under the
government system would still pay for it. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's interesting. And I think BC maybe started to play with that a little bit.
And Quebec did too, but it's against the Canada Health Act right now, but I think we need to change a lot of things in this country.
Well, we need to revoke the Canadian Health Act. That should never have been put in place.
Agreed.
Like that's against Section 91, I believe. It shouldn't be there.
Oh yeah, no, it's a complete violation of provincial jurisdiction for sure.
Yep, yeah, and it's something I've been talking about for a long time. Revoke the Healthcare Act of Canada. It shouldn't be there. It's how they control and manipulate all the provinces' healthcare, and that's exactly how we got mandates because we believed we had to listen to them. So Canada needs to wake up.
In that sense, we're freer than the United States because the United States doesn't have the healthcare can be federal jurisdiction, but look at it. There's a Secretary of Health in the States, but there's also a Secretary of Education. Thank God we don't have a Minister of Education in Canada. Like that would be horrible. So we need to get rid of the Minister of Health and keep out that we don't want a Minister of Education.
Okay, so should we keep the licensing provincial? Do you still like the medical licensing provincial?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on the medical system, but I think that we should definitely keep healthcare provincial and maybe even make it more regional, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to see it move down as well.
I think we should have more than one licensing body, that's for sure. I don't think it should just be the College of Physicians.
Yeah, good point, because they actually make that monopoly.
Competition, yeah.
Okay, and then I guess my last question to you would be, is there any accountability in Take Back Alberta? Marco's no longer there. You got somebody else in there. What is accountability like in Take Back Alberta?
Yeah, so we have a 5-person board that I'm accountable to, that I report to for, okay, these are the funds raised. This is how this money was spent. These are the goals. This is how we're doing in terms of getting towards the goal. And then I have 10 captains that uh, I guess I oversee as the executive director, but I see it more as kind of a mentorship program, teaching them what I know. Some of those captains have gone on to be on the boards of the United Conservative Party. Some of them have gone on to be to MLAs. Some of them are in the premier's office. Basically, I train them and then they go and do political things. But
Cool.
we have 10 captains, 2 for each region, 2 for the North, 2 for Edmonton, 2 for Central, 2 for Calgary, 2 for the South. And we try to keep that model because that's basically the model that the party works off of. They have the 5 regions. There's two board members for every region. So we have 2 captains for every region. But in terms of accountability, besides spending the money, there's not really any decisions that are really made, right? And we're not trying to push policy through. We're not a lobbying group. So besides, where the money goes that we collected from our generous donors, there's not a lot of accountability needed because there's not really, any any decisions that are being made besides that.
No, fair enough. Good answer. And where do you find future leaders, and how do we encourage, support them to enter the race? I find this to be a problem because anybody who's smart enough usually stays away from politics.
Yeah. Well, it's really just a matter of talking to as many people as you can. That's why we need people to invite people to meetings because, in your average room of 250 to 500 people, less than 10 are really willing to step up and lead. So that's why we need bigger rooms. We need to be finding more people that are willing to lead. And then as a group of people, we need to get behind them and support them. That's the big message of Take Back Alberta. You don't just say, okay, good, you go run, and I'm glad you're running now. I don't have to worry about it. It's like, no, now you've got to go and raise money for that person that's running. You've got to go and talk to your friends. You've got to bring people to meetings. Like, it's a lot of work.
For sure. And I actually had a question. On a federal level, if we were to get the balance of power out of the NDP's hand into someone else's hands, like independents, maybe some PPC, do you see that as a more attainable goal to possibly take 25, 30 seats in the West instead of aiming for a large government? And if we were able to succeed and get enough people out in the West to take a seat so that the balance of power sits with them, do you think that'd be effective? And is this maybe a way to start working on the federal government?
Well, the problem with the federal government is that it's determined by Quebec and Ontario, and it will always will be. So people aren't going to be concerned if there's a few extra people that are conservative or independent in Western Canada, because they're either conservative or they're independent, but that's not actually going to impact the balance of power. The balance of power is decided by the GTA, Vancouver, and Montreal. And so that's the real problem, is those are the places that are going to get the most attention, because those are the places that, that need to be won in order to form government. So I don't know that would actually work, because I don't think it makes that much of a difference whether you have, independents from Alberta or conservatives from Alberta. I think they're going to be ignored either way.
Full stop. Like, you don't think we can get the numbers from the West to hold that
Well,
balance?
no, because I mean, if we already have the numbers from the West, we already have the conservatives, right? And even like we already have all of these MPs that are being ignored by the NDP and Liberals. And if that's a conservative or an independent, it doesn't matter, because the problem isn't Alberta or even Saskatchewan or most of Manitoba. All of those can continue to go the way they're going, and it won't change anything about government. Or they could not go the way they're going, and it won't change anything about government.
Okay. And then could you get behind more independent MPs? I'm not trying to plug myself, but I'm absolutely putting that out to there. Could Take Back Alberta get behind MP level independent people?
Oh yeah, we could. We're very focused on Alberta right now, but I see a Take Back Canada forming in the future. I do believe that's something that will happen. I mean, it's happening in Saskatchewan. It's happening in Manitoba. but it takes, I don't have a problem with that. Take Back Alberta's message is go where you could be the most effective, right? And so that's why we told people to join the United Conservative Party. That's why we told them to help get Danielle elected, because your vote was worth more, right? Only 16,690 people voted to get rid of Jason Kenney in the mail-in ballot. And that's what it took, 16,690. 900 people showed up to the River Creek Casino, and they took over the board, and the media is still writing about it, right? It's about what Take Back Alberta. So if the action was, well, this independent MP could make a huge difference for sure. But if the action is, we need to take over these conservative constituency associations to send people to the national convention to elect a new board for the national party, then that would be, the move. Whatever in any given context, the most impactful move is, that's what Take Back Alberta will be doing.
Okay, and you know what? You just gave me another idea, because one of my paths to the House was through CPC. So I've joined the CPC party with the intent of challenging my local CPC incumbent through the CPC party. 25 members, I can start getting into the leadership race, that kind of stuff. So this is more in line with what Take Back Alberta does, is get into the power party.
That would be more the Take Back Alberta path. However, again, the message would be, you would be one of the battles in a great war, right? Because if you just got elected, I've seen it happen. One person cannot make a difference, right?
Sure.
Right. It takes an army. So
so if we focused on Alberta MPs, conservative or not,
focused on Alberta MPs, we can have a very big impact. Very big. Now, I'll say this: the federal party is far more corrupt than the provincial party, right? And you see this with how they manage their nominations all the time. So it would be a lot more work. And a lot of people, when they don't see instantaneous results, they get discouraged. My answer to that would be, well, what is worth doing? Hard things. That's what's worth doing.
100%. And that's why I did it. I know it's going to be difficult. I know it's going to be like almost impossible, but that means almost impossible, not completely impossible.
Oh, well,
and that's my entrepreneurship kicking in right there.
There have been independents elected, right? It has happened. So it's not impossible.
No, but that's what I like, that as an entrepreneur, we look for those market opportunities and where someone's not doing it. And sometimes it's because it was too hard. So that's why you have to come in and work twice as hard as the next guy to get it done. Hence my podcast, hence my activities towards the House right now as an independent. But I'd love to speak to you a little bit more about supporting Take Back Alberta on the MP level as well. So getting into the CPC party, making some waves, getting some support at that level as well.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, I do have to go, guys. I'd like to keep
talking. We do too. We would love to keep talking, but we have to get back to our day as well. Yeah, right. So maybe in the future we'll have you back in a few weeks or so. Maybe we'll have you back, because I'm really impressed with what Take Back Alberta's doing. And over the next little bit, I'm going to spend some more time there and check it out.
Awesome. Thank you very much, guys.
Want to leave everybody with a last message from you?
My message is get involved. It's the only way we're going to stop this.
Thank you very much, David. I appreciate that. You have yourself a great day, and congratulations on the child. And you're going to wait till kindergarten to gender your child, right?
No, whatever it comes out, that's what it's going to be.
Take care, David. Thanks for coming. Bye. Appreciate it. Here you go, Donald. That was a good interview. Inspiring? I was really impressed.
That was very inspiring. Okay.
Yeah, honestly, like I didn't know what to expect. There were some questions around this organization he's part of. I think he answered things tremendously. In fact, walking away from this interview, I have a little bit more respect now for Danielle Smith and what she's working on. And I definitely have a different take on the disappointment around the Alberta Police Force. If she's got an incentive in place and it is causing municipalities one by one to switch over to their own police force, this is the same thing. We just have to eventually get to the point. I think we need to
look into that. We need to look into that on this show. We need to look into what it really is and maybe follow this and see what's happening.
Well, maybe through David or some other friends we have, we can get Danielle on now. Because if we can construct the conversation with Danielle around, can you clarify this incentive around municipal police forces? Can you let us understand where you're headed with education? And how are you tackling the complex issue of healthcare? I think if we can frame the questions, we might be able to get her on. It'll be tough, but I would love to go down that conversation a lot more. So I was happy with that. The chat, how were you with that conversation? I did ask all the questions that I had got. I got a huge list of questions that I had before I even started this. I got them all out. And was there anything that wasn't addressed? I got one here. Oh, it's Rocky. Sorry, Rocky. What about the solidarity movement? We'll take back Alberta, stand with them. I think what he's focused on changing the government directly. Not necessarily solidarity. So it looks like Take Back Alberta is more involved in the current government and guiding and adding voices into the current government instead of necessarily solidarity. Now, the current government is headed in that direction, so I would assume so are they, given on what he was talking about, trying to go from globalists, from nationalists down to regionalists, down to localists. He definitely seemed to be on that wavelength. So Rocky, hopefully that is the correct answer to that one. And that's all the questions. Unless the chat has something else. Doesn't look like it. So Donald, that was good. That was good. I like those surprise guests who really open my mind and get me thinking. And if I could get some support to take the seat from the current Conservative in my riding, that is definitely a path forward to the House. And that's one of the ones I'm looking at as well, Donald.
I think you should. I think you should.
Cool.
Tell me a little bit about the incumbent.
Gerald,
Digest
sure.
version. Yes.
Yeah. I'll give you first. I'll start with his accomplishments.
Okay. Now what?
Now his disappointments. He didn't stand up for us on the nitrogen issue. He didn't stand up on the mask issue. He voted for C4. So we got a problem with that one. And he is for end of life, not care, end of life service. And he's for that. So euthanasia. So we've got some of those issues with him. But I think the accomplishments is frustrating because he was pushing a federal government loan program for farmers, which was nothing more than a land grab. It would put them into default. And this particular program allowed the government to actually tie the loan to the property for seizure, when as before it was done on the product or the crops. Now he championed locally a government loan program which takes land away from farmers. So I wasn't impressed with that. Either he doesn't know what he's talking about or he just pushes whatever he's told to push.
How can he survive in your riding in the next election? How can he do it? With those policies, really? I mean, knowing
very
where you live.
It's very blue here, but they are fed up here. So Yellowhead's
maybe
unique.
You can give them another blue choice with you. Instead of someone who has betrayed farmers.
That's my hope with the membership itself, like the Conservative Party membership itself, the CDA here. I believe that they're fed up with him as well. They want not a backbencher. They want a stronger voice. They want somebody that will hold Pierre accountable. Because right now, there's just a whole bunch of guys that are just going to stand behind Pierre, and that's it. They're going to follow him. They're not going to hold him accountable. So part of my message to the CPC here in Alberta, members here in Alberta, is do you want a MP who's going to hold them accountable, or do you want one that's just going to give him a blank check and let him do whatever he wants? Because I can tell you our current guy is not a dog. He's not a fighter. He definitely is a secured vote for the CPC, whatever they want. So that's one of the challenges. And if that doesn't work, independent is still my run. Because at the end of the day, I want to get the voice of Yellowhead into that house, and it can happen both ways. So I'll be highly considering that. And that is why I joined several months back, the CPC, because you have to be a member after 6 months. You can become a leader. So I had to put in that time first. But yeah, it was a really exciting conversation. I hope everybody liked it, and I hope this whole WEF connection stuff has been clarified a bit more, because I certainly didn't get globalist vibes out of this guy at all. He does seem to be a localist for sure.
Quite the contrary about the World Economic Forum vibes out of David. No, he seems to be on the home team.
And I'm impressed how smart he is. Like the way he handled even pushing on Danielle Smith from you and me, the way he handled that. He's a diplomat. He's good at this. He's good.
Good. Well, let's see what happens.
All right, folks. Well, it wasn't necessarily Coutts related, but this was Alberta politics related, and everything Alberta politics, it relates back to Coutts, judicial system, healthcare system, especially with Tony and some of the other guys having issues with the Alberta healthcare system, and then making a friend with somebody who has some influence and has a bit of a following and is a leader, I think is also beneficial. So, David, if you're listening to this after the fact, if there's anything else you can help out with the guys, specifically the Coutts, Chris, Jerry, Tony, and Chris, if there's anything you do to help with that, reach out. But have yourself a great day, Donald. And what can we look forward to the rest of the week on your side? You're doing some articles. You're getting something come out.
I am. First of all, I just want to mention this is day 555 for the Coutts 4. Without bail, they are being held as political prisoners. And I don't believe, after looking at everything else, I don't believe they will ever convict on conspiracy to commit murder. I just can't see it ever actually happening. I don't believe there was a conspiracy. I just don't believe it. So, okay.
Nope.
Fine. What have I got coming this week? Well, okay, I'm on shows from all over the place. Two more today, all about the Detective Helen Bruce case. We finished 5 days of hearings. It's not complete. It's going to go into October and then into January. And I spoke about yesterday. I spoke about the absolute disaster on Friday when we learned that the prosecutor and one of the witnesses who was being impeached for effectively for lying, making things up, they're sister-in-laws, and no one knew. The credibility of the tribunal, of the prosecution, of the judge, and the Ottawa Police Service took a serious blow on Friday, and that's where my focus is this week. I'll be covering that in a major story, and then we'll move on to some of the other things. But as one of my legal friends said, full stop, what happened on Friday should cause a retrial or a dismissal. They just can't move forward at this point and still retain any credibility at all. That's what I'm looking into this week. I'll have a major article and a report for you by the end of this week.
Thank you, Donald. I agree with that. I'd like to see what Bathsheba says recently. I'm still going to reach out. She's mid-hearing, whatever we want to call it. But yeah, it'd be kind of cool to see how she feels about this, whether or not she needs to stay it or go to another court for this or what. But yeah, I'm excited. So anything that changes, let us know for sure. Okay.
Okay, that's one thing we don't have is the legal teams and the prosecution have refused to speak to the media at all. So I understand why on both sides, but now I think the prosecution is going to have to come out with something. The judge is going to have to come out with something, because the foundation of credibility for this entire procedure was destroyed on Friday by the Ottawa Police Service.
Yeah.
They didn't have to choose. They didn't have to choose that prosecutor. They had many to choose from, but they chose the one who had a personal interest in saving her sister-in-law from being impeached under some tough questioning that she deserved.
There may not have been many hands that went up when they asked who wants to do it. They may have to pull straws out, because I wouldn't want to. I don't want to.
No. That's not enough of an excuse.
No,
everybody knew. Everybody knew that appointing a prosecutor who was a family member with one of the witnesses totally undermines, it brings the entire Ottawa Police Service into disrepute. It brings their integrity into disrepute. And yet they made that decision. And the judge knew, and there's some written decision about that I'm attempting to obtain. So no, there's no excuses here. It was reprehensible conduct on the part of everybody involved.
Well, I agree with you on that one, Donald. Keep us posted, and maybe something will happen with that soon. Who knows? But you have yourself a wonderful day,
Great
and thanks for
show.
getting up early.
See you next time.
We'll chat soon. Take care, Donald. All right, folks, ran a little bit late, but that was a wonderful episode. I didn't know anything about David other than what my chat was telling me about over the last couple of days, and some notes I got and some questions I got from friends of the show. And I thought it went good. I'm impressed. I didn't know really what they were about. I thought maybe it was another type of party, but it's more of an advocacy group of the current government to hold them accountable and to push them. That's a good thing. I like that. I'm certainly going to spend some more time getting involved and look into what they're all about, because that was our 2-hour intro to them, and it was a good intro. So I do appreciate that. And David, thank you for taking the time. And to everybody that sent in questions, thank you very much for that as well. I think it helped a lot to understand what David is up to and what this means for Alberta. I like it. I like it. So take back Saskatchewan, take back Manitoba, possibly take back Canada or things in the future. And look, it's not a challenger. It's a cooperative more than anything else. It's not trying to take the government down. It's trying to guide them. And I kind of like this approach. It's why I joined the CPC party on a federal level, was to do similar, go in there and do a leadership race, take on Gerald head on, hopefully debate him, gain support, see what the party wants. Do they want somebody who's going to follow Pierre, or they want somebody who's going to challenge and hold him accountable? We need a lot more MPs that are willing to challenge even their leader. And this is not a bad thing. It may be difficult for the leader to work with, but this is what democracy is supposed to be. So we'll see how that goes. And I got a lot to learn from David. So thank you all very much. Another great episode. And we'll see you later today, where we have James Bauer on, so from Canada Unity. And then tomorrow we'll be talking to some more people from Ontario, political prisoners. So we're really working hard on Wednesday to make sure that we have basically the East. So east of Manitoba will be on Wednesdays. West of Manitoba, including Manitoba, is going to be more on to Tuesday, Thursdays. Friday is still trying to be friends and family. And Monday is Donald's episodes, where he brings us the news that he's working on. So thank you all very much. And I look forward to seeing you later today. I love you all. God bless.